G'day everyone, welcome back to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos. Today we are going to be continuing with our Mutant series. This time around we're going to take a look at the purple 5-star legendary hero, Xyloid, the Polymorphed Driftwood Mutant. So Xyloid is available for summons, as we saw, from the Mutant Mayhem portal, which rolls around once every 16 weeks. The Mutant Mayhem portal is the newest of the challenge events. It was added many years after the original 3. Theoretically, there should be one more challenge event yet to come, because we are still missing a blue reflect event, but who knows if or when that will ever actually happen. So Mutants comes around once every 16 weeks because it is on a rotation with the other 3 challenge events. And in terms of the portal itself, just real quick, the odds are shown here. So you've got a 1% chance of getting the one of the 2 featured event heroes, and a 0.6% chance of getting one of the non-featured ones. So putting that in perspective, if you did 100 summons in this portal, costing you 260,000 gold, you'd be getting, on average, 26,000 gold. You'd be looking at getting 63% chance to get one of the 2 featured heroes, either of them, and you'd be looking at about a 45% chance of getting any of the unfeatured heroes. Those odds do drop off dramatically when you're looking at getting a specific hero, so yeah. Moving on, Xyloid has been around for a while. She was part of the original release of the Mutant Mayhem back in October 2022. The family in the portal's been expanded a couple times since then, in March and September of 2023, and then also most recently in January 2024. I'm going to flip over and we can take a quick look at her artwork. So thanks Mixterius for passing this one through, but this is what her artwork looks like. She's got the big old driftwood claw and a big old driftwood fist. And that's how she is the Polymorphed Driftwood Mutant, I guess. So, a bit woody in her textures and stuff, but that's what she's got. A big old claw and a big old fist. Or a chunky fist and a thin fist? I don't know. But yeah, that's her artwork. Cool. So she is, as we've sort of talked about a couple times here, she is a member of the Mutant Goons, or just the Mutant family for short, which means that Xyloid has a 10% chance to cast Natural Selection effect whenever she actually uses her special skill. So what this does is it does one of 3 things, which are random in the selection. So option 1 is it will apply an attack buff of plus 140 and an accuracy buff of plus 44% to all allies for 3 turns each. Option 2 is to apply a debuff shield for all allies, making them immune to new status ailments for 3 turns. And option 3 is the inversal of damage over time, or the reversal of it, where your allies will gain healing for the quantity of damage they were supposed to take, again for 3 turns. So it's a little bit confusing. It's even more confusing when you see it trigger on a battlefield, because you're not really sure exactly which one you're getting, because you sort of have to wait until the animation's cleared and you can see the buffs. But yeah, the second one is probably the best option. The third one is probably the least useful option, but yeah, pretty decent all in all. Mutant family members also gain stat bonuses for having multiple unique heroes in a battle, so you gain a plus 2, 4, 6 or 8% attack and defense bonus for having 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique members of the mutant family in battle. Notably, they must be unique heroes. You can't bring 2 copies of Xyloid. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like Xyloid and Mothor, or Xyloid and Mothor, or Xyloid and Fungi Beats, for example. So the natural selection only need 1 hero, getting that stat bonus needs 2 or more. In terms of her personal stats, Xyloid does come in with 724 attack, 757 defense, and 1403 HP. So there's not really any skewing in this. There might be a very, very marginal attack towards HP skew, but it's so marginal it's not worth really mentioning. Her charge speed is set to 56, which is average and requires 10 tiles to charge, or 5 ghosted tiles. A speed break is easy to do, just needs plus 2, so you can do that with either of the purple speed guns available. To get a double break, however, you do need plus 9, which you can achieve with weapons alone on the plus 9 Explosion DB90, which is a 5-star gun. The other 5 stars, Pearl Scale Convex, it only does plus 6, so it will only get you that first break. The speed node really isn't relevant because you're not gaining any benefit out of it. You can get the first charge break with the speed node alone, but if you've got a speed weapon you can apply to her, you probably don't need the speed node. But if you are strapped for speed weapons, it might be worth it to grab the plus 19 2% node on her class tree. And speaking of which, Xyloid is a member of the Sentry class, which grants her the chance to armor up and gain 5% armor after receiving any form of damage. I don't mind this perk. The damage can come from any source: minions, tiles, skills, DOT, whatever. The downside is that it can only proc once per turn, so it doesn't matter how many instances of damage you take, it will only proc once. And the other downside is that, unlike the medic class, it only applies to the sentry hero. So that is a little bit of a downer, seeing as medic does 7% heal to all allies, whereas the sentry does 5% armor to one hero. So yeah, a little bit disappointing, that one, but anyway. In terms of an emblem path itself, I personally would probably go for an attacking path. So what this looks like, I'll just pull up my unicorn, because she has got a similar path and she is a sentry class hero. So I'd be looking at doing something like this. So I'd be following the attack path the whole way down. If there's a choice between defense and HP, I tend towards going defense stat over HP. That's just my personal preference. Yeah, I just find it works out better for the most part when you've got, you know, defense ailments and such in the game, but no HP ailments. So yeah, we can see we're going and picking up the attack node. There's no attack node to choose from, so I'm just not picking that healing node. It's very useless for the most part. So we'll go attack, and then attack and defense at the end. And as is the case, you can choose whether you're going to pick up that speed node or not. The choice of picking it up will just depend on whether you've got speed weapons available or not. So yeah, just pretend that this is Xyloid, not Unicorn, but that's a very similar to path to the one that I would take. I'd be looking to do an attack and defense route. Heading back over to the portal, and we can take a look at Xyloid's special skills. Her special skill is titled Branch Knuckle Bash, and at level 10 skill and 56 charge speed, it will deal 295% damage to the target and nearby enemies. It will also apply the Toxic ailment to the target and nearby enemies, which deals minus 412 HP over 4 turns, or 103 HP per turn. If the targeted enemy already has Toxic, nearby enemies will also receive the Toxic ailment, and then the target and nearby enemies are also unable to benefit from resist effects for 3 turns. This effect cannot be cleansed. So a little bit going on. We're going to take it apart a little bit so we can examine it in a bit more detail. So starting with the damage component. So damage is very difficult to calculate. It's easy to calculate, sorry. It's difficult to normalize because there's a lot of factors that run into the damage calculation. So what I do instead is I compare damage dealers based on their attack power, which feeds into the damage calculation. So attack power, it's just their attack stat, 724, multiplied by the percentage in their skill, 295%. And in the case of Xyloid, we can see that that comes out at 2,136 attack power. Because heroes have so many different speeds and different charge rates, to normalize it, I just get that and divide it by the number of tiles, which comes out as the attack power per tile. And for Xyloid, it's 2,136 divided by 10 comes out at 214, which, as we can see there, second best in purple. Not too shabby for DOA 3 hitters. This is on a per enemy basis as well. So this is actually going to hit 1, 2, or 3 enemies depending on your targeting and the split of the heroes. So yeah, number 2 direct damage dealer in the purple DOA 3. So pretty good damage even without factoring in the Toxic ailment. Speaking of which, the Toxic ailment, let's break it down a little bit. So the Toxic ailment is kind of like the souped up version of the Poison ailment, much like the Blaze is like the improved version of Burn. In this instance though, the difference between Toxic and Poison, yes, you are more likely to have a higher amount of HP removed, but the main difference is that Toxic can spread if the target already has Toxic when they're targeted. So for Xyloid here, her Toxic ailment does minus 412 HP to the enemies over 4 turns, which is the 103 HP loss per turn. So unlike the Blaze ailment, the HP loss is sort of consistent with other DOT losses. So Blaze is typically it's more damage and a faster duration, whereas Toxic seems to be, by and large, similar to the poison damage in terms of its quantity and also in terms of its duration. The main thing though, as I said, that differs between toxic and poison elements is the expansion or infection factor. Specifically, it will infect nearby enemies if the target already has toxic. The extended duration of toxic compared to poison does make this more likely, but the DOA 3 nature of Xyloid kind of works against the toxic ailment realistically. So if we consider a situation with Xyloid, you're already putting toxic on 3 enemies, right? So targeting nearby enemies receive toxic. So we're already putting it on 3 enemies. So the center target, and if you target them again, they've already got toxic. So it's not going to spread to the nearby enemies because they already have toxic. So you can't double apply toxic to the same enemy. So the only time that the infection is actually going to apply is when you still have 5 targets to choose from, and you're going to target the middlemost one of those 5. So specifically, if there's a defense team, you target the tank with the first cast, you got toxic on left flank, tank, and right flank. And then on your second cast, the tank is still there, so you target them again. And in this instance, the toxic will go on left flank, tank, and right flank. But right and left flank already have toxic, so it infects the 2 wings. If the tank's not there, you remove them from the situation, you're only able to target the 2 heroes on the left or the 2 heroes on the right. You're not getting that ailment spread happening. There is sort of a edge case where if you lose one of the wingers, you can sort of still get the other winger by targeting one of the flanks, but it's a nice bonus in terms of the damage, but I don't think toxic makes any sense on Xyloid. If it was done where when the target enemy dies, like Blaze, and it propagates that way, maybe more use, but because it's on a recast, I don't see it as being overly effective on Xyloid because she's already got a DA3 nature. Anyway, moving on from that to the final line of her skill, which is the application of an ailment resistance blocker, or an ailment resistance, I guess. You could call it that. Anyway, it prevents affected enemies from gaining the benefit from resist effects, such as those from like the support class talent or an ailment shield, such as what Doodle gives. It is pretty decent. It's also pretty niche because there's not actually many heroes that this would affect, and it also needs very particular timing if you're going to even use it to negate a hero who gives resistant buffs, because you actually need to apply it before the ailment shield goes on. So if you want to stop Doodle's effect from being useful, you have to cast Xyloid before Doodle, because otherwise, if Doodle has put up his ailment shield, it's just going to block her blocker. No, it'll block her blocker. Gets confusing, I know. So realistically, this is an ailment resistance that can also be resisted in the final instance. So a hero can also resist the ailment resistance. Everyone confused yet? Yeah, so basically, niche effect. You do still have to make it apply in the first instance, so it can be resisted, which will prevent it from affecting anything. So overall, Xyloid's a fairly decent attacking hero, mostly on the back of her fairly hefty DOA 3 damage, which you can improve with EDD or, Elemental Defense Down or Defense Down abilities. A really nice pairing might be with Mirage variant, who does Elemental Defense Down to 3 enemies, and then you combine that with Xyloid's direct damage and DOT, it's pretty much going to be 99 to 3 enemies most of the time. I don't see the toxic elements being a very good fit from the toxic perspective, but the DOT is definitely a very nice addition to her direct damage. Don't get me wrong about that. So Xyloid's grading, I'm going to give her an A- grade for war and attack situations. As I said, she has got really great damage output, and the DOT is a nice little bonus on top of it. For war machines, I'm going to drop that down to a B, because she doesn't actually contribute a huge amount to a war machine beyond her tile damage and a little bit of DOT and direct damage, against a war machine's total health, that is. For eventing, I'm going to bump that up to a B+. DOA 3 hitters are probably the best application besides multi-hitters for eventing, so very good usefulness there. On war and raid defenses, B+, best suited as a flanker, probably workable as a wing hero, but again, she's mostly there for that damage output that she gives. In terms of the tournament settings, in Bloody Battle, I'm going to bump her up to an A grade for an attack and an A- for defense. And this is because DOT is typically more powerful on Bloody Battle tournaments because cleansers are usually linked to a healer and there's no healing in these settings. So you're more likely to have the DOT last the full 3 turns, or 4 turns as the case may be. In buff boosters, I'm going to give her a B+ for attack and a B grade for defense. Doesn't do a huge amount for that tournament rules, but then again on charged attack I'm going to give her an A- on attack and an A- on defense because she does gain that charge improvement from 56 to 65. So overall that works out as being a B+ grade for attack and a B+ grade for her defense. And that concludes the content that I have for this review of Xyloid. As always, these are just my personal opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback on them, so please do jump down to the comments section, drop me a note. I love reading them and I try to respond to as many of you as I can. If you did enjoy the video and found it to be useful, please drop a like on it, subscribe to my channel, there's heaps more stuff like this around, but most importantly, share the video with your people, your ally mates, because realistically, if it was useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the people you play with as well. So thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, please stay safe, good luck, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!